In AD 79, Pompeii and Herculaneum were prosperous cities on the fertile slopes of Mount Vesuvius. Pompeii, the larger of the two, was slightly inland, southeast of the mountain. Herculaneum was situated on the coast, to the west. Residents had no idea that recent powerful earthquakes might indicate danger.
The exhibition is all about the life of ordinary Romans in their homes, concentrating on the domestic side of things. The cities are so interesting with the baths and the gladiators, but there have been a lot of exhibitions about those. We're looking at the dog and two other items in the exhibition which really tell us what the exhibition is all about. The wall painting, the fresco on the back of the case, shows a scene of daily life. The cast of the body of a dog from Pompeii, and next to it a table in wood that was carbonized, and that table from Herculaneum. They were buried in different ways by the volcano. Herculaneum was buried by an avalanche of volcanic material that was much hotter. It was about 400 degrees centigrade. And what that does with bodies, we will be completely desiccated, maybe even burnt down to the bone. But with organics, such as wood and leather and even food, what happens is that the intense heat, the ash swirls around the material, encases it, and bakes it, turns it into charcoal. And that only happened in Herculaneum.
This beautiful table here is almost exactly like the little table in the fresco there.
Absolutely. In Pompeii, the furniture isn't carbonized. It isn't hot enough to carbonize it. And so the furniture in Pompeii rots away, leaving just voids in the ash. But the interesting thing is that when the ash swirled around the people, or even as here a dog, it swirled around bodies that weren't desiccated and burnt because the temperature wasn't so high. And there's enough time for the ash to take the shape of the body before it rots away.
And so in the 18th century, when Pompeii was rediscovered, people discovered that there were these voids in the earth where human bodies had once been, and then learnt how to make plaster casts. So it feels very much as if we're in a lovely Roman atrium now, Paul. There's the water feature here, a lovely pool, colonnade, and this rather extraordinary statue in front of us. Could you tell us about it?
Well, this fine man is a banker. He was the founder of a dynasty of bankers, and almost certainly, well, I think definitely we can say that he will have started off life as a slave. If you were a wealthy Roman, wealthy enough to have a house like this, and of course what we're doing here is giving people the idea of a general Roman house. So, as you say, the beautiful pool, the water feature here in the centre. He's standing in a very prominent position because what he's doing is guarding the house. He's a herm, which is originally a Greek idea of having a pillar of marble, not a full statue, but a pillar of marble with a bust originally of a god, such as Hermes, hence the name, or Dionysus. The Romans take them over and they guard the home.
So you say he's got a head, but he's also got a penis.
He's also got a penis because the original Greek herms had a penis on them to add to the protection. The penis, the phallus as it's called in art history, is a symbol not of anything sexual for the Greeks and the Romans, but rather it's a talisman. It's a good luck symbol. And so putting it here on the herm adds to the protection that he gives us in the home.
And there are quite a lot of them lurking around the streets and houses of Pompeii and Herculaneum.
There were an awful lot of them. They loved their phalluses.
It's the baker and his wife.
I think its appeal is its humanity. They're so real. They're so human. These are not idealized portraits. These are real people. You can see people looking like him walking down the main street of Naples or even modern Pompeii today. But it's what they're holding that is so fascinating. He's holding a scroll. which could be a speech, it could be deeds of the house, it could be any number of things. But she's holding the waxed tablet, and these, we know, are used specifically for business matters. They're used for contracts, they're used for accounts. So who is running the business end of things? It's the woman. And their pose is very interesting. They're side by side, but she is forward of him. And the message that this is sending is that they are at least equals. These are what we might call middle class people. And yet here we are with the woman not being at all subordinate, on the contrary.
A stylus poised to inscribe some accounts or write out a contract.
Definitely.
Let's go through to the garden.
When we stand in this part of the exhibition, we see a complete Roman room. You have the total decoration of a room that looked over a garden terrace in one of the huge houses on the west slopes of Pompeii.
I love this, the way the man-made elements, the fountain and the statues, just give way, and then you're into this beautiful wild wood with everything incredibly carefully depicted.
It's just so random. The birds are flying everywhere, perching, flying. It's a marvellous fantasy. It is a fantasy because I'm reliably informed by people who know more about birds than I do that the birds, the trees and the flowers as shown here couldn't all be in the same place at the same time. The Romans didn't invent gardens, but they did invent the idea of bringing the garden into the home. And here you've actually got the garden coming into an individual room. So it's a very Roman fantasy.
I mean, there's something really interesting about this kind of sculpture that, on the one hand, the whole exhibition makes us feel common spirits, common cause almost with the people of Pompeii and Herculaneum, because like us, they lived in houses and there are various things that we recognise. And then on the other hand, there are things that really bring you up short. We think, well, actually, they were pretty different from us in all kinds of ways.
I think the Romans were extraordinarily like us in many areas, but there are certain areas of Roman life that we would find very challenging. Nowadays, I suppose there are fewer people who would find their views on sexuality and sex challenging. They were simply far more open about many aspects of that. But, for example, the slavery, we would find a bit of a challenge to our sensibilities. But on the other hand, we would applaud the fact that there was a path to freedom from slavery. But the Romans were not us.
This is a loaf of bread that's still absolutely pristine. It's carbonised, but apart from that, it's absolutely pristine.
It is an incredible survival from Herculaneum. As you say, looking almost good enough to eat. If it wasn't black, you'd think, and the very interesting thing about it is this loaf of bread actually has a rectangular name stamp, which gives the name of the slave who made the loaf of bread.
And can you pick it out? Can you say who it is?
At the beginning, you've got the words Kelleris. Now that's the of Keller. So made by Keller.
Isn't that amazing?
And Keller, of course, in Latin means speedy. So we can imagine making lots of loaves of bread very quickly. And this was carbonised by the same processes. In Herculaneum, the intense heat turned it into charcoal in a split second. It's very sad, but true that, of course, the death of the cities happened, the volcano, and that's why we have these amazing things. That's why you have these incredible people.
You know, even though it's so long ago.
It is very sad, and it really brings it home that they were ordinary people like us, just going about their daily lives when this terrible catastrophe happened. And the fact that everyone was cut down, rich, very rich, poor, soldier, doctor, woman, slave, it doesn't matter. Everyone was snuffed out by the eruption.
I mean, this is such an affecting cast, or is this a replica of a cast? But at any rate, it doesn't matter. It's this figure of this cowering, crouching man, a cast from Pompeii.
It's a very moving piece. He died alone. When the archaeologist who was excavating Pompeii in the 1920s and 1930s discovered this particular cast, and of course they never knew what the body was they were going to uncover. They just knew there was a void. It could be a woman, it could be a man, it could be a child. When Mayuri, the excavator, found this body, he said he was like a beggar crouching on the church steps, this terrible, sad, pathetic figure, dying alone in Pompeii.
And this is just sort of, I mean, you just can't look at it really without feeling awful. And this is clearly a family locked in some kind of awful moment of anguish.
It's heartbreaking. This is a family, a man, a woman, a child rearing up on the woman's lap, and a little child that was found slightly apart from the others, but we believe strongly was part of the same family group. They were found together, believe it or not, only about 20 yards away from the beautiful garden room. They were found in the House of the Golden Bracelet, so named after an incredible piece of jewellery that the woman was wearing. Because they are so wealthy, because they were found in that house, there's every reason to believe that they are the people who lived in that house. They would have enjoyed that beautiful room, the birds, the trees, and then maybe the following day they died under the stairs. They're caught in the moment of their death. And sadly, what we can see is not efforts to protect themselves. What we see is the involuntary spasms of the body as it's cooked by the superheated avalanche that enveloped them. One of the saddest things is that the little child on the mother's lap was probably in her embrace. She was probably trying to hold it, and then she's thrown back by the blast of this pyroclastic surge. The little boy who was found slightly separate from the others is perhaps the most moving piece of all, because this little boy is still wearing his tunic. You can see the folds of the tunic, and you can even see his facial features. It's a little boy, 3, 4 years old, and it reminds us that these are not museum artifacts. They're people. They stand for real people like you and me, who just happen to be caught up in these awful, extraordinary events.